Welcome back to Rowing on the Square. Today's guest is Lisa Lowe, a physical therapist based in Boston who brings both personal experience and professional expertise to her work with rowers. Lisa started rowing in college at Ithaca and went on to train at Riverside Boat Club in Cambridge. Along the way, she faced the same injuries many rowers struggle with, but after a car accident a few years ago, she required a hip replacement at just 35. That journey through rehab, paired with her clinical training, gives Lisa a unique perspective on how athletes can manage training loads, avoid setbacks, and keep performing at their best. Today, she blends her lifelong passion for rowing with her work in physical therapy to help athletes stay strong, healthy, and in the boat. Please welcome Lisa Lowe.
I'm not the same hip replacement as someone in their 70s who gets a hip replacement, obviously.
Exactly. And I think we can kind of dive into that too a little bit and just kind of put the little preface on it. But I think as far as like the surgical process and the recovery process and working through that, I think like you'll have some really valuable information to share with people about how that process worked for you. So if you want to just kind of give us some short background on why you had the hip replacement and how long has it been since the replacement?
Yeah. Okay. So you want to start from there?
Yeah, that'd be great.
Okay, cool. Okay. So let's see. I had my left hip replaced in it was October 29th, 2024, so almost a year ago. And the reason I needed it replaced was because I was hit by a car in 2018 and it broke the neck of my femur, right? So the part from the ball to the shaft of your femur, and they originally put 4 screws in there to stabilize it so that the bone would heal, but the bone was just dying. So I was walking around on top of screws, which is not nearly as comfortable. And I would say rowing wise, it started to create back pain because I couldn't get into any hip internal rotation, right? So I just like couldn't get into a good catch position. So yeah, I had lost other than maybe like 90 degrees of flexion-ish to like sit in a chair, I had lost pretty much all other motion of that hip. And it was pretty painful to like walk and all that kind of stuff. So even though, I was only 35, like the surgeons agreed that yes, I need a new hip. And so I ended up going with a lateral approach instead of an anterior, which were kind of the two I was debating between. And the reason I went with a lateral approach is similar to an anterior. They don't cut through your glutes, right? The surgeon I worked with like resects your piriformis and puts it back
Okay.
instead of shoving it out of the way. I guess those are the kind of two different options in getting a lateral approach. They like shove it and hold it there, or he's like, I find that irritates it more. So he's like, I just move it and put it back. Um, which seems like it was fine. I've never actually felt my piriformis before, but definitely now know what that feels like because it still was a little grumpy from being, moved. But yeah, so I went with a lateral approach because like surgically, right, the sort of dislocation that they have to do in order to do an anterior replacement is pretty aggressive. And because I had like legitimately zero internal or external rotation or extension or anything, as like none of my tissues have moved out of middle for years. And even though I'll be under anesthesia and my muscles will be relaxed, all that kind of stuff, I was just like, nope, nope, nope. We're not going to make my nerves all of a sudden go there. And we're not going to make all this stuff all of a sudden go there.
Yeah.
Could it have been fine? Probably, right? But that was just, sort of as we've talked about before, like knowing the more, that was my like, yeah, no. I've seen like a anterior replacement in the OR and it's amazing, but like I was like, yeah, I can't do that. So lateral, they literally just lay you on your side and they kind of go down and they like kind of go in and out through sort of the same space to get the old stuff out and put the new stuff in. Yeah, and then the precautions for a normal person or a standard post-op precaution for a lateral is the same as anterior. I had extended time on crutches because those screws came out and I had the risk of a trochanter fracture. So I couldn't have any like frontal plane
Mhm.
demands. So I had crutches. I think I had 2 crutches for at least 6 weeks, and then I moved down to 1 for probably like 8, 9, maybe even a little bit more. I don't totally remember. Yeah, so that's where I would say my recovery is a lot slower than most people. Like other people I've met over the past even like 6 months who've gotten hips replaced. I'm like, damn, you're so much better off than I was at that stage, right? Because of like mine was more complicated.
Yeah.
Getting the hardware removed and just having had a lot of stuff already done to that hip in the past, right? Like it just makes it slower. But that said, like, I'm back rowing and doing doing things slowly this year, and it's all so much better than it was before. So even it being, you know, a slower. So I would say the average rower to get a hip replacement would probably be months ahead of kind of where I am, just because I'm complicated.
Okay.
But, yeah.
So at this point, almost a year out, how much rowing can you tolerate?
So, given that I also have an almost 2-year-old and there's that time mixed in, I've relatively recently, so I'd say about a month to 6 weeks ago, I really started just realizing that I was like missing the community that rowing gives you and like all of those aspects of like what rowing is, right? More than just the fitness side. And so I went out for a row, I feel like with a friend in a double just as a like, how does this feel in getting back out there? We literally, I think, went 4K in like 45 minutes, right? And it was great. And so then from there, I feel like I was like, okay, this finally doesn't hurt my hip. This makes like rowing actually feels like really nice. And like I don't have to be super careful like I've had to be for the past like chunk of years. So I had started erging once a week and going on the water once a week. And I would say I have a 2-year-old schedule that's been working really well. Because I do find, and again, I think this is a little bit of a me thing, but maybe not. I do find that I do get a bit sore, like, and I can almost like feel the implant a little bit if I just do, like, I need to build up my repetitive flexion movements slowly.
Yeah.
And it's not like it doesn't feel like bad, right? It just feels like, "Oh, I'm still adjusting to this." Like, if I kind of cross that like, I'm kind of at 45 minutes right now is my amount of moving that works well. And if I every time I kind of cross that next 10-minute threshold, I get, like, a little bit sore, and it's like, "Okay, I wouldn't do this again tomorrow." But in a couple of days, it's totally fine, and I can go back and I can do it, and, like, so that's where I've just been trying to be smart and doing little bits at a time and, taking the breaks and doing all that kinda stuff to sort of do the self check-in, but I'm also, like, you know in the like I want to retrain everything to move really well. And so if I'm like, shifting back to old habits or this or that, that's where I'm just like, well, we're gonna stop. We're gonna sit here. I'm gonna have some water and then we're gonna try this again. So yeah, I would say at the moment 2 days a week. I'm hoping to bump it up to 3 kind of going into the fall a little bit more. But I definitely need a day in between or the repetitive flexion just kind of adds up. But yeah.
As far as like your catch position, how much range did you start with and how much do you feel like you've gotten back to now?
So I'll say for me, my catch flex position is more limited by my ankles and my knees.
Yeah.
But so like pre hip replacement, so like last year when I was trying to row, I was like that dumped backward pelvis when I would get to the catch because I had absolutely no ability to get my hips through. And now I feel like I'm able to get like that nice rock through, like keep my ribs and hips on top of each other and actually have a good angle. So I feel like I went from a like this kind of person to back to here. So my back is so much happier, right? Like I think when I called it quits last fall rowing, my last row I went out for all of 2K and like tweaked my back because I had no range and was like, and we're done. Like we're not gonna do this. So I would say rather than like actual sort of like slide length, I feel like I've gained back like actual supported catch positioning
No.
because I can actually keep like my core and everything. Like I can use my glutes and I can actually like get, a good connection rather than kind of, I feel like as my hip got worse, I was sort of just like somehow putting my blades in the water and taking them back out and not necessarily using proper things anymore. So yeah, I I can stay connected with my core and my glutes, like, through the whole drive, and I would say that's definitely my biggest, like, power gain and all that kinda stuff, yeah.
Amazing. Favorite drill that you're doing right now? Like, thing that's, like, kind of because you were talking about, like, catch position and when you're feeling like those old habits kind of creep up. So, what particular drill are you using to keep the old habits at bay?
So I feel like to help my brain feel safe and comfortable again with getting like pelvis through, right, and keeping connection, especially like through my left leg, I spend a lot of time with kind of like a finish to bodies over. Like I might add my arms in, I might keep them straight, but I feel like I do a lot of just kind of like blades in, rock, blades out, kind of back and forth at the back end. And yeah, and similarly kind of using like regular pick drill to lock in that like, okay, like, yes, hips through, now go up. Now, like that whole side. I would say at the moment it fatigues me a little bit too fast to kind of spend a lot of time at the front end. So
Mhm.
like if I were like I've played with it some to kind of feel that like hold your body position and get the leg drive and then open and it just fatigues me really fast. So it's a matter of like, do I do this drill or do I spend 10 more minutes rowing today?
Yeah.
Um, and I've opted for the 10 more minutes rowing so far. So, but yeah, I would say that's, and I'll do like, if I'm erging, I'll do a little bit of like non-handle, kind of just like that same like pelvis prep before I get moving. Cause I do find that I still need to like remind my brain, like, hey, hi, it is safe and fine and not painful to like move through this hip and like use your muscles on this side. So yeah, I would say those are my like, hi, I have a left hip that works well again. Let's do this kind of spots that I sort of are drawn back to often. Yeah.
And that's interesting that you talk about, like, it being safe. Like, being in that motion and being able to access that motion again is can be really tough for people just to because I mean, rowing kind of puts us into those extremes, and if you've had problems with those extremes and you get into them, like, continuing to think of that as being a safe space is, like, a big deal. It is
Yeah.
really, really and, like, did you do anything in particular besides, like, the drills and just kinda thinking through it, like, any mental practice to work through the pain through the hip and, like, being more comfortable with, like, accepting, like, "Okay, not painful anymore. Let's do it. We can do it."
I feel like in some ways I through other stuff sort of like realize like how many other things were now pain free in moving through just like normal life, that then I felt confident of like, oh, rowing is probably actually going to go pretty good again now. Like I probably could try it and it'll be great. Like I had rowed in pain, right, for years on the other hip and like just did it because I wanted to and it was fun and I was just gonna like that was just life at that point, right? Which I feel like is most people who are looking at a joint replacement, right? A lot of life is just painful for a long time and then it's not anymore, but like what's going to still feel good. And so I feel like between work, moving a 2-year-old, an almost 2-year-old around, and my kid's big. He's like already almost 40 pounds. So it's like he's a lot to lift and walk and this and that, and even like biking had gotten bad too, and like biking had been going well. And, so I feel like it was more of the check boxes of other stuff that was like, oh, I can do this again and it's okay, that I felt like, no, I just need to like allow myself to commit to the fact that I want to row and be with my friends and be on the water with other people and see people at the boathouse and all that like great that we get out of rowing. Cause I feel like if anything, it was that mental shift of like, no, it's safe and fine to have these expectations. Like I'm not going to disappoint myself because I'm going to try for this and it's going to go badly. Right. I'd say that was more of the work I had to do, was to let it be something that I didn't feel like was gonna fail and that I actually could like build my way back to and kind of gain back. Cause yeah, I mean it's one of those, right? We all go from rowing being this like most of us anyway, right? This massive like friends and teamwork and all this wonderful stuff that sort of like helps you fall in love with the sport. And then obviously in my current stage of life between being a mom of a little kid and whatever else, I've just had to come to realize like, okay, rowing for you right now is that one day a week where you get to go to the boathouse, you get to say hi to whoever's there, you get to go have your fun on the water, great. and to not have it have to be bigger than that. And, I feel like that was more of the shift. I feel like anytime I've had to step away and come back,
Mhm.
I feel like we all kind of go back to what college was, or what your highest level of training was in rowing, and like, oh my gosh, can I do that again? It's like, well, no, I don't want to do that again. I want to be here, and that's great. So, yeah, I think it was kind of those mental pieces that I kind of just had to sort through and realize, like, I can commit to doing this. It's not going to hurt me. It's going to, like, make me socially happier, and, kind of all that stuff. But yeah.
If you had to give advice to someone who has a hip replacement scheduled, what sort of things, and they're a rower, what sort of things would you suggest they think about, and what should they do during their recovery, and what expect, like, because we talked about expectations, like you're not going to be 100% back to, because we always think of like our highest level, like when you get back in the boat, you're like, oh yeah, I'm going to get to there eventually, but yeah. So like if someone's got it planned right now, hip replacements on the calendar, what would be like maybe three things that you'd suggest to them?
One, the first couple months are tough. I would say, regardless of kind of me being more complicated or the other people I've seen, it's right. It's like some people are fine within like 5 weeks. Some people it's that 8 week mark, right? It's like you have it's a major surgery, it's a major recovery, and like being ready for that, I think is something that was underplayed to me, that I think the surgeons do it all the time. And the surgeon typically, right, your PA is usually the one that actually follows up with you in the short term. Like the surgeon doesn't see you until you're at least 6 months out, and then you've kind of forgotten what the beginning was like.
Yeah.
And so I would say that that's the piece that I wasn't quite ready for. I would say how, kind of like, and I should have been, right? But it was just everyone downplayed it like, "Oh, you'll be fine, you'll be fine." It's like I was fine, but like it was still a lot. And I feel like I was glad in some ways that I wasn't feeling rushed to get back to rowing, right? I feel like I gave myself, granted, like I had my hip replacement kind of towards the end of the fall, so it's like I wasn't gonna hop on an erg in the winter is the first thing I was gonna do. No thanks. And then yeah, I feel like I wanted to feel really solid with just like being a human first, right? Like the walking, the stairs, the this, the that. And so I feel like being patient to like let those things sort of fall into place was for me, that was helpful. And then yeah, I would say then just being cognizant of like it is a lot of hip flexion to come in and out every stroke, and that repetitive motion, like you just got to build it up slow. And I feel like that's not something like a surgeon's necessarily going to understand, because I feel like it's a really different type of hip flexion than like cycling is, right? And as much as it's semi-similar range of motion, it's just like a different power production. And so I feel like that side is where, truly that's where it's like having people like us in your side, right? Having someone who understands from the PT side and from the rowing side to help you build back a progressive program. Cause that's what, like, as we've talked about in the past, like literally I was like, well, here's my chance to try it. Like, let me just see what I tell everyone to do. And so far, so good. So I feel like that was the piece that, from the pool of knowledge, like, you and I kind of have in that way, that was definitely helpful, but something that, like, unless you have somebody with rowing knowledge kind of on your side, it's, maybe not going to be thought of quite the same. But yeah, good test dummy to kind of use a lot of things that we've talked about in that way and just kind of see what happens. So
Amazing. Thank you so much for chatting with me about that. And it's going to be so helpful for people because I always feel like when you have one of these major decisions to make or a major surgery, it's just like they tell you, like you said, like the surgeon's like, oh yeah, you're gonna be all right. And but they're not gonna see you until 6 months rolls around. And they're speaking from, their end of like, I do this every day. It's not
and, like, they know that their technique is phenomenal, they know that the hardware is gonna do a great job, they know that from their end, the structures are there and you're gonna be great, and, like, it's super true. But, yeah, I would say really, like, understanding where the patience needs to be, and then rowing-wise, like, having some help there is super helpful, yeah.
If you enjoyed today's conversation with Lisa, you'll want to check out her new course, Keys to Working with Rowers. Lisa brings together years of clinical experience as a physical therapist and decades of rowing experience to give clinicians unfamiliar with rowing the practical tools needed to treat rowers right away. Whether you're a coach who has a training staff who is unfamiliar with rowing, an athlete seeing a clinician with limited rowing background, or a fellow clinician who just wants to learn more about rowing and how to treat it, this course will help you understand the unique demands, preventing common injuries and keeping athletes performing at their best. You'll find the details and sign up through the link in our show notes.